Ever since black men flexed their economic muscles and forced a white racist sympathizer to flee his post, the white supremacists have gone absolutely berserk. The image of the powerful white president of a university getting tossed out on his ass in less than a day simply because a bunch of black football players merely snapped their fingers, that's an image and a reality that will live with white people long after this story has faded from the headlines. White people think of the college campus as their exclusive property, where they have it all their own way. It's an essential part of white culture, from Skull and Bones to Animal House. Since blacks have been all but excluded from higher education, it's really impossible for black people to properly understand how much whites have invested in the concept that they own the academy. Nothing happens there that they don't allow. The only blacks are the handful of tokens and athletic workhorses that they accepted. So when those workhorses turned on them, that hurt white people to their souls. Missouri University is hardly an Ivy League school. In fact, it's not really remarkable at all. For any thinking person, it would be ludicrous for white people to invest as much racial pride into it as they have, except it's not. Whites have built a perfect wall of white privilege, and the hallmark of white privilege is that they can abuse their power constantly, with absolutely no repercussions. They don't want to see any bricks taken away from that wall. White identity has come to mean openly racist, but it also means those who they oppress are powerless to stop them. As the Marquis de Sade once said, the will of the common man must never be able to touch the powerful man. Well, in this case, it not only touched him, it destroyed him. White privilege vanished in an instant, and they aren't adjusting very well to this new reality. They are now facing a circumstance where they can't spew their racism with quite as much impunity as they used to. Their actions are now starting to carry consequences, and their media mouthpieces have been twisting themselves in knots playing the victim. But it just isn't washing. The white right-wingers have been schizophrenic. Some of them have tried to put a pretty face on what is a clear loss for white supremacy by saying a liberal university dumped a liberal school president. But clearly that lie didn't fool even themselves, so they immediately dropped the pretense that this wasn't a loss for white supremacy and began to whine and rage about how this was nothing but white males getting the shaft. So much for it being a case of liberals eating their own. Right-wing hate radio and the FoxNews fringe have been pushing out the talking points at a hypersonic rate, and it's easy enough to tell what the spin was supposed to be. It's all a hoax, or at the very least, if it's real, it's not that big a deal to begin with. After that, they said it's unrealistic to expect a university president to be able to do anything about racist behavior on a college campus. This is white privilege all day. If someone had written the name ISIS on the wall of Liberty University or SMU or Harvard or Yale, would any of these right-wingers be saying it was no big deal? If white students said that Muslim students were yelling Allahu Akbar on campus, would Fox News, right-wing radio, or the online Klansmen be saying there's nothing the university can do about that? Would any white person be accusing the white students of being privileged kids with oversensitive feelings? Would you see them saying that the students were whining and shouldn't expect anyone to prevent them from being offended? Of course not. They spend every day talking about how it ought to be legal to racially profile and how the government ought to have the ability to tap phones, at least when Bush was doing it anyway, and that the full power of the state should be used to do exactly that. Every day they show that not only is it possible to go after people based on behavior, but that they can go after you merely for being seen as part of a certain group, regardless of if you've done anything or not. The problem here is the white supremacists are now seeing people demanding the exact same measures be carried out against them. Their fear is that they're about to be on the receiving end of their own policies, and they're trying to head it off. Some of the StormFront keyboard Klansmen have visited my channel as expected, and, just as Fox News and right-wing radio told them, they've been spamming the net with the meme, "It's all a hoax, nobody's threatening the black students at MSU, etc., etc." They've then gone on to demand from people like myself proof that the white thugs have been threatening the black students. Okay, here's your proof. Hunter Park, age 19. He's been charged with making a terroristic threat after he posted this online. I'm going to stand my ground tomorrow and shoot every black person I see. Yep, relying on the old standby, and why not? The lie about I was afraid for my life has worked far more often than it's failed. Hunter, by the way, is a Missouri University student. Allow me to repeat that. He is a student at Missouri University, as the black protesters said. And here's another example. Connor Stottlemyre, also age 19. He's been charged with one count of making terroristic threats with reckless disregard, which is a felony, and making terroristic threats with criminal neglect. And here's another. Tyler Brandenburg, also 19, and also threatening to shoot up Missouri University. Missouri University has a collective student body of around 35,000. That's jam-packed by any estimation, but you wouldn't know it after the white thugs issued their death threats. The campus is all but deserted. And you have to take them seriously because every time we look up, who do we see shooting up elementary schools, movie theaters, restaurants, and churches? It is part of white male culture to commit acts of mass slaughter the first time things don't go their way. Now, we racially profile Muslims at airports because, according to the white supremacists, it's stupid not to profile the people who we know commit crimes. Since I know the white supremacists will try to say neither of these creeps was any real threat, according to court documents, Hunter Park has a, quote, deep interest in the mass shooting at Umpqua Community College in Oregon last month. Because of this, he's been denied bail on account of being a threat to the community. But, just like Dylan Roof, we know these mad dog race killers aren't alone. Sure, they caught 3, but how about the hundreds of others who they haven't caught? When are the authorities going to start looking for them? So, I don't want to hear any complaining when the profiling of white males commences. In fact, it's long overdue. We know who the mass murderers are most likely to be. We know who in the society has been conditioned to think they have a right to kill innocent people just because they're unhappy over some trivial thing. These are the white thugs who the black students at MSU have been complaining about, the ones who the white supremacists have been trying to claim don't exist. You have white males threatening mass slaughter because somebody else lost his job, not because they lost their job, but because a man who they didn't know, never met, and couldn't give a damn about lost his. And even then, they don't care about Tim Wolf losing his job. University presidents and chancellors come and go. The problem they had is with the reason he lost his job. Because he refused to do anything about white racist thugs. Like them. And now they're scared the hammer is about to drop on them. They turned MSU into a safe haven for white supremacists. And now that haven has started to crumble. White supremacy is an institution, and institutions require continual, revolving support from the society. The educational infrastructure is part of that support. Schools are where the next generation of white supremacist leaders come from. So this matters. And those same white males would have been threatening Tim Wolf's life if he had expelled them from campus. Perhaps we're beginning to understand why Tim Wolf was so reluctant to take action against the white supremacists who were literally standing right in front of him. White supremacy creates one generation of savage beasts after the next, and these beasts were as likely to turn on him as they were anyone else. Now, as for the supporters of Hunter Park and his ilk, you'll notice that these keyboard Klansmen don't give any evidence that the claims aren't true. Instead, all they do is to attempt to accuse the black students of whining about nothing. No, whining is what white males do when somebody says the new Star Wars movie will star a black man. Only white supremacists will scream that something is a hoax, and then when you demand that they provide proof, they change the subject. But then again, maybe Fox News and Rush Limbaugh are right, and this is all just some enormous, elaborate hoax by a bunch of devious black students. The black students made up the story about the swastika, and the racist insults and threats. And Hunter Park is also part of the hoax, and he lied when he confessed to the authorities that he did it. And Connor Stottlemyre is also part of the hoax, and Brandenburg too. And the police and DA are making up stories and pretending to charge these innocent white males with crimes they didn't commit. And the administrators of Yik Yak are lying and gave the police Park's cell phone number in order to make people think this was racist. Yep, the whole damned world is lying, and only the white supremacists are telling the truth, even though they have yet to give us a single shred of evidence to prove these racist incidents aren't happening. Yeah, that makes much more sense. I'd like to add something else here. I'm sure you've noticed the last year or so that there's been an avalanche of anti-black vitriol, and most of it coming from white or Hispanic youth. These are children doing this, from the SAE fraternity punks to Dylan Roof to this and hundreds of others that only make local headlines and millions of others that no one's heard of. White people love to say that they don't teach hate in their homes, but the culture of auto-voyeurism that the digital age has brought about is proving that to be a lie. We are seeing what whites have always taught their children. In public, they claim to be colorblind, but as soon as they think no one is watching, they act like the white supremacists they've always been. The white millennials are also showing that their parents have taught them white supremacy needs to go on a war footing. The white youth of today are every bit as racist as their great-grandparents, and black people had better start recognizing that fact. One last thing, not that this has anything to do with the threats or whatever, but am I the only one who notices that these guys all have an amazingly inbred look to them? I mean, I think it's supposed to be against the law to procreate with your siblings, even in Missouri, but, well, never mind.